Cara, chimpanzé entrar na época das pedras, o chimpanzé batendo
That
pedra.
chimpanzee just made a stone tool, and that one's hunting with a spear. If this looks like the Stone Age to you, you're not wrong. They've wielded stone tools for thousands of years, and some are virtually identical to those crafted by our own ancestors.
So are they truly in the Stone Age or just standing on the edge? Let's find out.
Realmente na pedra,
For decades,
pedra, ou eles
research-
estão só se fazendo? Peraí, quero ver se qual é. Bota uma legenda aí, chefe. Traduzir automaticamente, vamos ver se fica meio raro ou se fica bom.
Researchers thought tool use is what separated
Caralho,
us from
find out.
essa ferramenta aí, chefe.
For decades, researchers thought tool use is what separated us from the other animals, what made us human. That was until a revolutionary
A forma de usar essa ferramenta era o que nos fazia humano.
primatologist conducted a study in the
Uma
1960s.
paleontologista
Jane Goodall
descobriu
ventured
que-
into the remote
que na real
Gombe
que não é
Stream
assim que
National
funciona.
Park in Tanzania. One day, she witnessed chimpanzees at a termite mound repeatedly poke stalks of grass
Ela
into the
viu que
holes.
os-
The termites would bite onto the grass defensively,
Ah.
allowing the chimp to pull
Aí ela viu que os caras estavam usando, tipo, palito de coisa pra pegar as formigas no meio da floresta. Que eles botavam o bagulho ali dentro, que nem ele fez aqui, tá ligado? E ela ficou, opa, isso é ferramenta, povo.
them out and eat them. Astonished at her discovery, Goodall told paleoanthropologist Louis Leakey, who wrote,
E aí o Louis
that we must
Leakey
redefine
fez-
tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as human.
Aí ele falou, então já com essa descoberta aí, hoje a gente vai ter que redefinir o que significa ferramenta, redefinir o que significa homem, ou aceitar que o chimpanzé é um ser humano.
Tools are evolutionary game changers.
Então não é o que faz a
They
gente...
unlock resources that would otherwise be impossible to reach.
Sim, as
In the
ferramentas
case of termite
fizeram-
fishing, the stick directly aids chimpanzees in acquiring this food source.
Aí, por exemplo,
But this is
esse
far
bagulho
from
aí-
their only tool. Further research has
Mas não é
found
a
that chimpanzees
única
actually
ferramenta
use
que ele
over
faz.
20 different tools.
os caras conseguem
One
usar
of the
várias
most
ferramentas
important is
diferentes.
their use of stone tools.
As
Stone
pedras são uma das
hammers are used to
principais
smash open hard nuts against anvil
para
stones.
quebrar os bagulhos, por
This
exemplo.
lets them consume abundant calories they otherwise would have no chance at eating.
Para eles consumirem caloria que eles necessitam.
A recent paper looked closely at this behavior and found something fascinating. Using stone tools to open nuts is not present in every population.
Não, nem todos os macacos fazem essa mão aí.
Chimps in seasonal, resource-scarce environments exploit nuts more often.
Os que estão em, tipo, em lugar tropical e bagulho, eles exploram mais as nozes do
The
que os
study
outros.
also looked closer at the hammers and anvils themselves.
Mas
They
olharam
found
pro
that they
tipo de
differ
martelo e
regionally
bagulho
and
que
choose a
eles...
certain hammerstone size depending on the hardness of the nut.
E
The
dependendo
so-called
do lugar,
anvils that they
eles
smash the
escolhem
nuts against are usually
umas
just
mais
large
duras do
flat
que as
stones
outras.
that happen to be near the nut trees.
E eles
These
escolhem,
anvils are
tipo, dependendo do tipo, eles só escolhem as que tá mais perto
fairly
da árvore
distinct
mesmo.
archaeologically, and researchers have found evidence that their use goes back at least 4,300 years, meaning that this behavior likely extends far into prehistory. What is also interesting to note is that some populations do not smash nuts at all, meaning some chimpanzee populations are more technologically advanced than others.
Aí, se algumas são mais
Another
avançadas que
important
as
tool that
outras.
chimpanzees use are spears. Yeah, that's right.
Português e
They make their
Portugal é
own
muito bom.
spears by taking off a sturdy stick and biting the tip to form a sharp end.
Caralho, eles
use
criam as
these
próprias
weapons that-
ferramentas, viu? Eles pegam qualquer graveto que eles acham e eles moldam da forma que fique útil pra eles.
Stab into the burrows of bush babies, which are some of the cutest animals on the planet. They jam the
Caralho.
stick into the burrow, killing the animal, and then they use the stick to get the animal
Caralho.
out. These spears seem
Eles
to be
usam o
used
bagulho pra matar os bonecos dentro do bagulho lá e tirar os caras de lá de dentro, comer eles.
exclusively for hunting animals that they physically cannot get to. They have never been witnessed using them against one another. However,
Nunca foram
chimpanzees
vistos
have been
sendo usado eles, tipo, esses bagulho contra o outro. Pra
documented using sticks and branches to hit each other.
Mas eles já
They
foram
even
vistos
throw
com esse
rocks
bagulho
during
assim, ó.
aggressive encounters.
E até tiraram pedra um no outro já. Mas não como lança assim, tá ligado?
It seems that they have already had their 2001 Space Odyssey moment.
Parece que eles já tiveram esse momento aí que eles... Que eles
So
tiveram o momento lá do
chimpanzees use
2000.
rocks to crack open nuts, they fish for termites, and they even stab prey with spears.
Então eles
So have they
fazem
truly
esse...
entered the Stone Age?
Será
Well,
que
they are
eles já
far from
entraram
the
na
only
Idade da
animals to
Pedra?
use tools. Orangutans
Corvo
use sticks
também
to
usa,
fish for
orangotango
insects
também
and
usa.
honey. You may have even seen this image of an orangutan spearfishing. While it is true that this orangutan was imitating some fisherman he was watching, he was unsuccessful and pretty much just splashed a stick at the water, so it's not impressive as it might seem. Apparently after this shot he ended up stealing a fish that was already hooked by a fisherman, so I guess that's a win. But plenty of other primates like
Orangotango dos mais
capuchin
a
monkeys
tem.
use stones on a daily basis to open shellfish. Even otters use stones to open shellfish. Crows fish with sticks,
Yeah,
and
o
octopuses
crows
use
são
shells
massa.
for protection. Tool
Caralho.
use is not exclusive to humans nor primates. So then what set
Vários
our
animais
ancestors apart?
usam
Well, our ancestors took stone tools to another level by modifying them. By smashing stones together, they broke off sharp stone edges which could cut. This opened up all kinds of new resources for our ancestors. Just as the termite sticks or spears allowed chimpanzees to extract calories out of their environment, sharp stone tools allowed our ancestors to do the same. On the savannas where we evolved, carnivores are constantly killing
fazer essa mão com pedra afiada, tá ligado? Pedra
prey and
lascada.
leaving their carcasses with plenty of meat and bone marrow left over. A study looking at zebras killed by lions found that on average, 33 pounds or 15 kilograms of meat was left over. That is roughly
Caralho, eles
20,000 calories in meat alone, not to mention the marrow.
Deixa monte de bagulho pra trás.
This would have met the daily requirements of about 27 early hominins. But to harvest this meat, our ancestors needed the sharp edges of stone to cut through tendons, scrape
e aí
off
a gente
meat,
começou a comer, tá? Tipo, a gente comia o que os animais deixavam pra trás, tá ligado?
and break into the brains and marrow.
E aí a gente precisava dessa
This was
pedra
one of
lascada pra
humanity's
isso.
biggest breakthroughs, and it's not far off of
Porque
what
os caras
chimpanzees are currently
carnívoros
doing
deixam
in
o bagulho pra
Africa.
trás.
The earliest modified stone tools are 3.3
A gente vira carnívoro porque é fácil. A gente pega os corpos que os caras deixam pra trás ali, não deixa o surubu comer e comer a gente.
million years old. We don't know who was making them. It was most likely our ancestors or close relatives, but who knows? It could have even been the ancestors of chimpanzees. What we do know is that stone tool use wouldn't catch on until around 2.4 million years ago, when hominids started selecting stone that could hold a sharp edge, and then they learned how to produce efficient tools.
Here's an example of the kinds of tools that our ancestors were using well over 2 million years ago. It's really just a
Mais de 2
sharp
milhões de
flake of
anos
stone, but
atrás.
it's an incredibly useful tool for cutting through flesh and also pounding through bones and other objects. Though it's extremely
útil
simple,
pra
it was
caralho
an
pra
evolutionary
cortar.
game changer for our ancestors.
Many
Pra cortar os
paleoanthropologists
bagulhos ali
would
nas
argue that
carnes,
the
tirar os
intentional
cortar os
development
bagulho.
of a cutting edge
Isso
has to be
foi,
the lower bound of the
tipo-
Stone Age. Otherwise, otters and capuchins are also in the Stone Age. Chimpanzees
Ah, ele falou que, tipo, a pedra lascada tem que ser a base da idade da pedra do ser humano, senão todos os animais estão na idade da... Senão, tipo, esses outros bichos também estão.
have
Deixa os
never
caras
been
tá, chefe.
documented in the wild creating a sharp stone tool, but they are limited for a number of reasons.
São
First of all,
limitados, os caras falam assim,
fine-grained
cara.
stones that create sharp edges when broken, such as flint, are not common in the modern range of chimpanzees. Most of the time it is thick jungle, and the stones they have access to are basically useless for cutting. Our
As pedras que
ancestors,
eles
on the
têm,
other
né?
hand, lived across open, rocky savannas that often had sources of quality stone. But just because chimpanzees don't have access to the right raw materials for knapping stone, doesn't mean they lack the intelligence to understand it. So researchers had a bold idea. What if we simply taught a chimpanzee how to flint knap? Meet Kanzi, a language competent bonobo, who was taught to flint knap in the early
Bonobo
1990s.
Que aprendeu a
Bonobos
fazer a
are
pedra
a
lascada,
closely
tá
related
ligado?
cousin of chimpanzees, often seen as more socially intelligent.
Huh.
Kanzi was especially intelligent. He even learned how to play Minecraft. But it was this
Caralho.
video of him flint knapping that honestly blew my mind. They first focused on showing him how to knock off flakes through percussion, which is what I'm doing here. You literally hit one rock against another rock in order to knock off a stone flake. So now let's watch some incredible close-up footage of Kanzi napping.
Oh, look there what Kanzi made. That's really perfect. Oh, look at that one. Oh, thank you. They would really cut things good.
Kanzi was able to knock off flakes consistently, and after a while, he even came up with his own methods of flint knapping. Instead of using the hammerstone in his hand, he
Caralho,
started
aprendeu
throwing
a
it at
fazer
the
o
core.
bagulho.
This may have helped him overcome challenges unique to the hands of chimpanzees, or to protect his fingers. But how fascinating is it that he invented a new flint knapping technique?
Ela aprendeu a fazer o bagulho, e aí não só aprendeu, como que ela criou a própria forma dela de fazer a mão de uma forma diferente, tá ligado? De pegar a pedra grande embaixo e bater com a pequenininha em cima, ao invés de pegar a pequenininha e bater com a grande pra tirar um pedaço, tá ligado?
After 2 years of practice, researchers decided it was finally time to put his skills to the test. They gave him an unmodified core of flint and a hammerstone. Nearby was a clear box with fruit inside. It was held shut by a thick nylon cord. In order to get to his reward, he would have to
Caralho,
hit
peraí,
off a
pô.
large sharp flake to cut through the cord.
Aí eles botaram uma caixa com comida dentro que tava presa por uma corda, mas aí ela tinha que cortar a corda pra conseguir.
During the
E
trial,
aí eles foram ver se
knocking
ela
off
sabia o que
flakes
fazer,
was
tá
not a
ligado?
problem for the trained bonobo. However,
Yeah,
some of these
cortou.
flakes were too small, so he would try again. He would select the largest flakes and assess their sharpness by looking at the edge and testing it on his tongue. Eventually, he knocked off a large flake and was able to cut open the box. This process was repeated 11 times, producing an abundance of data and artifacts. Now here's where it gets really interesting. When researchers analyzed the bonobo-made artifacts, they found something remarkable. Many of them were virtually indistinguishable from the tools that our ancestors made 2 million years ago. The flakes had striking platforms, bulbs of percussion, and sharp usable edges.
O instrumento que ele usou foi muito parecido com o instrumento que a gente tinha usado na antiga.
The ones he decided to use were the largest and sharpest
Os que ele
tools.
escolheu foram os maiores e mais afiados.
His method of assessing the sharpness with his tongue may have been the same way our ancestors assessed
E a
sharpness.
forma que ele
But there
escolheu
were differences
fazer foi
too.
provavelmente
Our ancestors
parecida com o que a
usually
gente vai
knocked off
fazer.
flakes at around 80 degrees to consistently produce long flakes. Kanzi's flakes averaged nearly 90 degrees, essentially right angles. This is the maximum angle at which these materials will fracture at all. This tells us that Kanzi did not have quite as complex an understanding of flint knapping as our ancestors did 2 million years ago. And this may also be due to chimpanzees.
Aí ele falou que tipo, o cara não tem um entendimento complexo de fazer a pedra lascada, mas é que tipo, tá louco? Um grupo de pessoas, um grupo de animais, né, dos nossos ancestrais lá, em grupo, fazendo e aprendendo um com o outro e olhando o jeito que o outro faz e fazendo diferente. Ele aprendeu a fazer um bonobo aprendeu a fazer com umas pessoas ali e começou a fazer sozinho e aprendeu.
Chimpanzee hands
Mas pode
not
ser
being
por
as
causa da mão
dexterous
dele
as
também.
ours. Our lineage has been knapping stone for well over 2 million years. Modern human hands are quite literally evolved to knap stone.
As nossas mãos são feitas para bater pedra.
It was only in the past 5,000 years or so that most of us stopped.
Caralho. Mais ou menos faz 5.000 anos atrás que a gente parou.
Stone. It was only in the past 5,000 years or so
Caralho.
that most of us stopped.
A gente vem batendo pedra por mais de 2 milhões de anos. Só nos últimos 5.000 que a gente parou de bater pedra.
Kanzi's flint knapping was impressive, but it was notably worse than, say, Homo erectus. Either way,
Mas o Homo
it
erectus
gives us a
batia pedra
window into
melhor
what
que
the
o cara.
earliest sharp stone tools would
Tá,
have
pô.
looked like.
E o
Our
cara tá em
minds were already
2026,
capable of
Homo
understanding
erectus
how to
ele tá.
create sharp stone edges, and our dexterous hands came later. In another study conducted 14 years later, Kanzi had clearly become more adept at making and using stone tools.
E daí um
Kanzi
tempo
and another
depois,
bonobo used stone to break into logs and dig, both getting a reward if successful.
caralho dele
Kanzi
falar
used
assim,
flakes like a drill, rotating them to bore deeper into the log.
Caralho.
He used larger flakes as wedges to pry into the logs and even used them to chop. In another
Caralho,
part of
usando
the
pedra pra-
experiment, he used flakes as shovels to dig into tough sediment to retrieve
Caralho.
food. It's interesting to
Usando
note
pedra
that Kanzi
como
was
pá.
far more successful than the other less trained bonobo, indicating that his training really did pay off and allowed him to access these resources. Kanzi lived on for about a decade doing all kinds of fun scientific studies before sadly passing away in March of 2025. These
Caralho,
studies show
morreu,
that with
Kanzi,
human
velho.
interaction or training, bonobos and chimpanzees can produce intentional stone tools, leaving wear
Se o ser
patterns
humano ensinar o
comparable to
macaco
early
pode
human
fazer os bagulho,
artifacts.
tá ligado aí?
Such tool production and utilization
mano, que bagulho
competencies are
massa,
extremely
bonobo, né?
similar to the
Macaco.
competencies of
Tipo,
early humans
todos os
such as
gêneros
Homo
de
habilis and
primatas são
Homo
massa.
erectus. A 2021 study on untrained chimpanzees showed that they did not spontaneously create or use
Mas
sharp flake stone
espontaneamente eles
tools,
não
even when
fazem essas
provided
mãos.
with materials,
Mesmo que dê todo o material
suggesting
pra eles,
extensive
eles
social
têm que
learning or
treinar.
training is necessary for this behavior. We know that chimpanzees have to learn how to process nuts with stones and anvils from their relatives who teach them
Ah,
the
sim, mas aí
technique.
que pra
It's a
fazer essas
cultural
mãos também
innovation.
com...
In
É
order
por isso
for
que eu tô te
wild
falando,
chimpanzees
o
to
ser
start
humano
flaking
também.
their own
Os
stone
caras eram bons
tools,
pra caralho
they would have
porque
to have quality
fazem
stone available
em
to them,
conjunto, né?
and importantly, a reason to create sharp tools. Without direct human intervention, this
Sem o
seems
tipo
unlikely.
de interação
But
humana,
funny enough,
seria provavelmente
Capuchin
não.
monkeys in Brazil are accidentally
Right,
achieving what we
Brazil's
consider
capuchin
a
monkey.
human milestone. They use stone hammers to open fruits and nuts, but also for a far stranger reason. They smash rocks together to create dust which they then lick up. Scientists really have no idea why they do this.
Eles
Maybe
batem
some-
pedra pra fazer poeira, pra daí eles poderem lamber a poeira.
Help them get some minerals into their diet. Regardless
Aí os cientistas não sabem pra quê, mas talvez seja pra pegar uns mineral na dieta deles ou alguma
of
coisa
why
assim.
they do it, they happen to create stone flakes that are virtually identical to early human tools in Africa.
Ah, e aí os flakes que eles causam pra bater as pedras desse jeito é igual ao que os humanos faziam lá na África, na antiga lá.
These stone flakes have been found in Brazil in layers dating back over 50,000 years ago.
Caralho, 50
At first it was
mil
thought
anos
that
atrás
humans
os
were in the
macacos
region
brasileiros
tens
estavam
of
fazendo
thousands
essa
of
mão.
years before we thought, but it now seems it was actually capuchin monkeys leaving a seemingly human
Ah, e aí os caras achavam que os humanos já estavam lá antes do que a gente pensava, mas não, na real, que era só provavelmente os macacos que estavam fazendo essa mão aí, tá ligado?
Human
Os
signature.
cabonte.
So ironically, capuchin monkeys have unintentionally entered the Stone Age before our closest relatives.
Os capuchin entraram na Idade da Pedra antes que os chimpanzés.
So are chimpanzees in the Stone Age? Kind of, but not really. They've been hunting with spears and cracking nuts
Caralho,
with
mas é
stone
massa, né?
hammers for
Veja como
thousands.
os caras são muito parecidos com a gente, chefe. Que bagulho massa, primatas, né, Joe?